So, just to get started, we do know that China's shipbuilding capacity has expanded greatly since the turn of the 20th century. What kinds of challenges does this present to the US?
Well, there's really a few different interrelated challenges that it poses. The one that's getting a lot of attention right now in DC is on the economic front. China is over 50% of the market share, and it is just growing and growing and growing, attracting new orders. And that's really pushing other competitors out of the market. Now, the US hasn't been a huge factor in shipbuilding for quite some time. So, really, that squeeze is on some of our allies that are leaders like South Korea and Japan. But on top of the economic issue, there's really some national security concerns that go along with it as well. China's huge domestic shipbuilding capacity, that's helping to fuel its ongoing naval buildup, so that's a concern for the United States. And the other factor is that the shipyards themselves, most of the big ones, most of the major ones that we're looking at, these are dual use facilities, meaning that they're producing both commercial ships and military vessels at the same time. And what we're seeing and what we saw in a lot of our research is that foreign capital is actually flowing into these shipyards in a number of different ways, helping to subsidize the cost for China's ongoing military modernization.
So, in what ways is the US trying to counter what's happening in China, and has it been effective so far?
Well, there's a lot of momentum for this right now, as you sort of mentioned at the top of things. But it's not really something that's new. During the first Donald Trump administration, he kind of started talking about shipbuilding, specifically looking at icebreakers. There's a lot of momentum during the Biden administration, and now we're seeing even more interest in it now. And there's a few different things that are happening. The U.S. Trade Representative conducted a 301 investigation last year looking to see whether or not China had used unfair trade practices to gain an upper hand in the industry. And then earlier this year, it came out with some recommendations about how to confront that, looking at things like putting fees on Chinese vessels that dock at U.S. ports. And that's still underway. We're still kind of looking and trying to understand exactly what how that might materialize. We also expect there to be an executive order on shipbuilding in the next couple of weeks. And there's also the SHIPS Act, which is another piece of proposed legislation to help revitalize the U.S. shipbuilding industry.
One of the key findings of your recent report is that a fair number of US allies, including Taiwan, are looking to China for a significant amount of their fleets. How is it that these countries became so reliant on China for their shipbuilding needs?
This is a big question, and I think it's similar to the story we've heard a number of different times when it comes to China, right? China's able to mobilize its massive economic strength, put state support behind specific industries, behind specific state-owned champions. And what it does is it squeezes competitors out of the marketplace. And that's really what we've seen over the last 2 decades. If you go back to the early 2000s, China was only 5% of the shipbuilding market. Now it's over 50%. And there's been subsidies been in play, but also they produce ships quickly, they produce ships cheaply, and they produce good ships. And so market factors are really just driving companies to China. But I think we've kind of hit a point now where we can't just let market factors be the only thing we're taking into account when we're looking at this type of engagement with China. We really do have to think about the national security implications as well.
So, given that these are commercial vessels, in what way does their construction by China benefit that country's military?
I mean, there's a few different factors to think about when you're looking at commercial and military production. Up front, I do want to clarify that they're not the same thing, right? There's different types of technology, there's different processes, there's different personnel that are involved in them. But what we've seen, and we've observed this through years of satellite imagery analysis at CSIS, is that China has undertaken a comprehensive effort to consolidate at some of its biggest industries, expand those actually out, and blur the lines between commercial and military production. And there are benefits to that, right? It's not a perfect system, but there's benefits to that. A big one is that you help to offset the fixed costs of the shipyards with that foreign capital that you're getting for those commercial purchases. These are massive enterprises. These are huge infrastructure projects. And so if you can have dry docks and gantry trains and floodable basins, and you're building all of those and expanding all of those, and some of the costs of those are being offset by foreign capital that's flowing in, well, you're making it cheaper to build up your naval assets that are also using those same facilities. There's also a cyclical component of this as well. What we've observed is that when shipyards are getting a tremendous amount of new shipbuilding orders, they'll convert a lot of this capacity over to commercial production. And when there's a lull in that, we see an uptick in a lot of the military production at these facilities. And so there's this blurring that's occurring at these shipyards. And it gives China a lot of different ways in which it can leverage that. It can leverage it for commercial might. It can measure it for military might.